The morning sun filtered through the wide glass panels of Miho's luxury car garage, scattering golden light across polished metal and glimmering headlights. The air smelled faintly of motor oil and expensive leather, a scent Alberta had come to know as intimately as perfume. She had been in Seoul for 3 years now, test-driving cars for the wealthiest clients in Korea, and every day still felt like stepping into another world. Back in Ghana, she had grown up loving speed, sneaking out with her cousin's old Toyota to feel the thrill of the road. Here, though, she commanded Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Bentleys with the same fearless ease, leaving even the most skeptical clients stunned. Her straight black hair was tied into a high ponytail today, her skin glowing in the soft light, her sharp eyes scanning the glossy fleet lined up for inspection. Alberta walked around a sleek, cherry-red Maserati, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. She wore fitted black trousers, a crisp white shirt, and a black leather jacket, her unofficial uniform of confidence. She slid her hand along the car's body, nodding approvingly. "Still ahead of the pack," she muttered to herself with a smirk. From across the garage, Miho chuckled. "You talk to these cars more than you talk to me, Alberta." Alberta turned, flashing him her sassy grin. Miho was in his late 30s, handsome in a composed way, his tailored navy suit fitting him like it was stitched by hand. He was her boss, but also her biggest supporter, having recognized her talent for precision driving the very first time she stepped into his showroom. "I'd argue the cars listen better than you," she teased. Before Miho could reply, the low hum of an engine echoed outside. Alberta tilted her head as a sleek silver Aston Martin pulled up to the entrance, sunlight bouncing off its flawless surface. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a tailored black charcoal suit, his dark hair neatly styled, his posture commanding. He removed his sunglasses with deliberate ease, revealing sharp features and dark, calculating eyes. Miho's smile widened. "Speak of the devil. Who's that?" Alberta asked, her brows arching. "Joonsoo," Miho replied, his voice carrying a mix of warmth and competitiveness. "An old friend. And my biggest rival." Alberta raised a brow. "Friend and rival? Sounds complicated." Miho shrugged lightly. "That's business." Joonsoo walked toward them, his confident stride filling the space as if the entire garage belonged to him. Alberta crossed her arms, already bracing herself. Something about the man screamed arrogance, though she had to admit he wore it well. "Miho," Joonsoo greeted smoothly, his deep voice carrying authority. The two men clasped hands firmly, like soldiers measuring strength. Then his gaze shifted to Alberta. His eyes flickered just slightly before he smiled. "And who is this?" Miho grinned proudly. "This is Alberta Asare, my star driver." Alberta inclined her head but kept her stance firm. "Pleasure," she said, her tone polite but cool. "Asare," Joonsoo repeated, his accent wrapping around her name in a way that made it sound softer, almost deliberate. "That's not a Korean name." "It's Ghanaian," Alberta replied evenly. His smile widened, as if she had passed some unspoken test. "Interesting. A Ghanaian woman test-driving luxury cars in Korea. Now that is something I haven't seen before." Alberta smirked. "There's a lot you haven't seen, mister." "Joonsoo," he answered. "CEO of KS Motors." She gave him a quick once-over, unimpressed. "Figures." Miho chuckled at her boldness, but Joonsoo's eyes gleamed with curiosity rather than offense. "Confident," he said. "I like that." He gestured to a silver sports car parked just outside. "Tell me, Alberta, do you think you can handle one of mine?" Her smirk sharpened. "Handle? I don't handle cars, Mr. CEO. I own the road with them." The challenge sparked between them like flint striking steel. Miho stepped aside, grinning. "Well, this should be fun." Moments later, Alberta slid into the driver's seat of Joonsoo's car, the leather cool against her palms, the engine purring like a predator waiting to strike. Joonsoo leaned against the passenger side door, watching her with quiet intensity. "You sure you're ready?" he asked. Alberta shot him a glance, her lips curving. "Buckle up. Or better yet, watch from outside. This car deserves to be shown what it can really do." With that, she revved the engine and sped off, the tires screeching against the pavement before gripping the road with perfect force. Alberta maneuvered through the private test track with ease, her hands precise, her confidence unshakable. She drifted around corners with flawless timing, accelerated on straight paths until the wind whipped against her face, and pushed the car to limits that even Joonsoo himself hadn't dared. By the time she returned, parking with smooth precision, her pulse was steady, her expression victorious. She stepped out, her ponytail swinging, and tossed the keys toward Joonsoo. He caught them effortlessly, his eyes fixed on her. "Well?" she asked, cocking her head. For the first time, Joonsoo hesitated. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at his lips. Impressive. Alberta smirked. I told you. I don't handle cars. I command them. Miho laughed loudly. That's my Alberta. But Alberta noticed something else, Junsoo's eyes lingering on her, studying her not just as a driver, but as a woman. It unsettled her, though she refused to show it. Careful, Miho, Junsoo said lightly. If you're not, I might just steal her for myself. Alberta raised her brow. You couldn't afford me. The words hung in the air, daring and sharp, before she turned on her heel and walked back inside the garage. Behind her, she could feel Junsoo's gaze following, heavy and curious, like a man who had just discovered something he didn't know he wanted. By evening, after the cars had been locked away and the last client had left, Alberta found herself leaning against the hood of a Bentley, staring at the city lights through the wide glass windows. Miho came up beside her, his hands in his pockets. You impressed him today, Miho said casually. She scoffed. He's too arrogant for his own good. Maybe, Miho said with a knowing smile. But arrogance has a funny way of crumbling in front of the right person. Alberta shook her head, but she couldn't ignore the spark that lingered in her chest. The image of Junsoo's eyes on her during that test drive replayed in her mind, sharp and distracting. She exhaled slowly, brushing it away. I don't have time for men like him, she muttered. But when she walked out of the garage into the cool Seoul night, her heels tapping against the pavement, she couldn't help but wonder why she was still thinking about him at all. And across town, in his penthouse overlooking the Han River, Joonsoo poured himself a glass of whiskey, his mind replaying the sight of a Ghanaian woman with fierce eyes and fearless hands commanding his most prized car. For the first time in years, a smile crept onto his lips unguarded. She's something else, he murmured to himself. But one thing was certain. Alberta had made an impression Joonsoo would not easily forget. The following morning dawned crisp and bright, the kind of Seoul day where the sky seemed to stretch endlessly, washed clean after a night of rain. Alberta arrived at Miho's garage early, as she always did. She liked the stillness before clients arrived, the way the cars gleamed silently under the overhead lights like sleeping beasts waiting to be unleashed. She was wiping down the hood of a Porsche when the sound of a car engine cut through the quiet, deeper and smoother than most she had heard. She frowned, glancing toward the entrance. A black Maybach rolled in, its polished body catching the sunlight. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Joonsoo, impeccably dressed in a slate gray suit, his shoes clicking against the concrete floor with a rhythm that seemed deliberate. Alberta's brows rose. She hadn't expected to see him again so soon. She brushed a strand of hair from her face, determined to remain indifferent. Good morning, Miho, Joonsoo said as he approached, his tone polite but carrying that unmistakable edge of authority. Miho looked up from his desk, surprised, though not displeased. Joonsoo, this is a rare visit. Twice in 2 days. Some things are worth the effort, Joonsoo replied smoothly, his eyes shifting to Alberta. He offered a faint smile, the kind that suggested both curiosity and challenge. I came to see your star driver. Alberta straightened, narrowing her gaze. I don't recall sending you an invitation. Joonsoo chuckled softly. No, but I've never been one to wait for invitations. He turned back to Miho. I have a proposal. Miho arched a brow. A proposal? Yes. Joonsoo's gaze lingered on Alberta before he continued. My company is preparing to release a line of new luxury models for our VIP clients. I want Alberta to be the one to test drive them and showcase them at our private events. Alberta blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She placed her hand on the hood of the Porsche, grounding herself. You want me to work for you? I want to collaborate, Joonsoo corrected. You'll still work under Miho, but for these events, you'll represent my cars. Your reputation precedes you, Alberta. People trust your word more than flashy marketing. When you drive, people listen. The compliment was unexpected, and for a moment, Alberta found herself staring at him, unsure whether to believe it was genuine or just another tactic. And why me? She asked cautiously. Because you're the best, he answered simply, his voice steady. I don't waste time with second choices. Alberta folded her arms, hiding the way her pulse quickened. And what makes you think I'd agree? Because you like challenges, Joonsoo said, his eyes locking with hers. And this is one you won't resist. The air between them thickened, and Miho cleared his throat, stepping in with a grin. Honestly, Alberta, it's a good opportunity. Working with both companies only raises your profile. Think of it as adding another trophy to your collection. Alberta glanced at Miho, then back at Joonsoo, who was waiting patiently, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of amusement at her hesitation. She hated that he knew her well enough already to play on her love for challenges. Finally, she sighed. Fine, I'll do it. But only because Miho thinks it's a good idea. Junsoo's lips curved. Of course. Over the next 2 days, Alberta found herself at Junsoo's showroom, a space that was all glass and steel, gleaming with opulence. Every surface reflected the polished cars, and the staff moved with quiet precision, bowing respectfully whenever Joonsoo passed by. Alberta, however, walked in with her usual confidence, unimpressed by the grandeur. She was there for the cars, nothing else. The first model she tested was a deep blue Lamborghini, its engine purring like velvet thunder. Joonsoo stood nearby, watching intently as she adjusted the seat, her hands graceful but firm on the wheel. "You sit like you were born for this," he remarked. "Or maybe I just know what I'm doing," Alberta shot back, her smirk playing at the edges of her lips. He chuckled, clearly enjoying her defiance. Fair point. On the track, Alberta pushed the car harder than the engineers expected, her precision dazzling even the skeptical staff. By the time she returned, the small audience of VIP clients had erupted into murmurs of admiration. Alberta stepped out casually, brushing imaginary dust from her jacket. "Not bad," she said. Junsoo's gaze didn't leave her. "Not bad." She shrugged. "I've driven better." The engineers gasped softly, but Joonsoo only smiled. "Then I'll have to design something worthy of you." Alberta rolled her eyes, but the warmth in his tone lingered with her longer than she cared to admit. The second day was even busier, filled with back-to-back test drives and client showcases. Alberta handled it all with her usual poise, her sass balanced by undeniable skill. Through it all, she became increasingly aware of Junsoo's eyes on her, not in judgment, but in something that felt dangerously close to admiration. That evening, as the event wrapped up and staff began packing away, Alberta slung her jacket over her shoulder, ready to head home. She stepped outside into the cool night air, relieved to breathe without the constant spotlight. But before she could hail a cab, a familiar voice stopped her. "Let me drive you." She turned to find Joonsoo standing by his car, holding the passenger door open. His expression was unreadable, though his tone carried no room for argument. "I can manage on my own," Alberta replied, arching a brow. "I know," he said softly. "But let me anyway." For reasons she couldn't quite name, Alberta hesitated only a moment before sliding into the passenger seat. The interior smelled faintly of cedar and leather, the engine humming smoothly as Joonsoo started the car. The ride was quiet at first, the city lights painting streaks of gold and white across the windshield. "You were incredible today," Joonsoo said finally, his voice low. "I was doing my job," Alberta replied, looking out the window. "Plenty of people do their jobs. Few leave people speechless." Alberta's lips curved despite herself. "Is that your way of saying you were impressed?" Joonsoo glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "I already told you. You're the best. I just didn't realize how much I'd enjoy watching you prove it." The air in the car shifted, growing warmer despite the night outside. Alberta turned slightly, studying him in the dim light. For the first time, she saw something unguarded in him. Not the polished CEO, but a man who seemed almost human. By the time they reached her apartment building, the silence between them was thick with something unspoken. Joonsoo parked smoothly, his hands resting lightly on the wheel. He turned toward her, his expression conflicted, as though battling between restraint and desire. "I should," he began, his voice trailing off as he leaned just slightly closer. Alberta's heart beat faster, but she refused to let him control the moment. With a sly smile, she leaned in quickly, pressing her lips to his in a brief, teasing kiss. His eyes widened, surprise flickering across his usually composed features. Before he could react, she pulled back, opening the door. "Good night, Mr. CEO," she said with a mischievous glint in her eye. And just like that, she slipped out of the car, her heels clicking against the pavement as she disappeared into her building. Joonsoo sat frozen for a moment, his hand brushing unconsciously against his lips, still feeling the ghost of her kiss. A slow smile spread across his face, one that was rare and uncalculated. He leaned back in his seat, exhaling a quiet laugh. "She's dangerous," he murmured to himself. "And I think I like it." Outside, the city buzzed with its usual life, but for Joonsoo, the world had shifted. Alberta wasn't just a driver anymore. She was a challenge, a fire he couldn't look away from. And he knew, with startling clarity, that this was only the beginning. The morning sun slipped into the garage through high glass windows, gilding rows of gleaming cars with a golden glow. Alberta arrived early, her steps brisk, her mind replaying the softness of Joonsoo's lips against hers the evening before. She hadn't meant for it to linger in her thoughts this much, but every time she closed her eyes, she felt again the warmth of his lips, and the way her pulse had quickened when she had kissed his lips. She tucked her hair behind her ear, trying to shake the memory, only to find Miho leaning casually against one of the luxury SUVs, his arms crossed and his grin knowing. "So," he began, drawing out the word as if savoring it, "I hear the showroom was more than just about cars last night." Alberta's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" she asked, perhaps too quickly, which only made Miho chuckle. "Don't look so alarmed. Joonsoo may be my rival in business, but I've known him long enough to read the signs. The way he looks at you lately? Like you're the only thing in the room worth noticing. You should see his face whenever your name comes up." She rolled her eyes, trying to mask her blush. "You're exaggerating." "I don't exaggerate," Miho teased, pushing off the car. "I observe. And what I observed is that my best driver seems to have caught my rival's attention." He gave her a mock stern look, wagging a finger. "Don't let him steal you away, Alberta. I can't afford to lose you." His playful warning made her laugh, though her heart stirred uneasily. "Relax, Miho. No one's stealing me. You'll still have me test driving your toys." Just then, as if on cue, Joonsoo walked in, impeccably dressed in a tailored gray suit that hugged his frame with effortless elegance. His eyes immediately sought Alberta, softening when they landed on her. Miho noticed too, smirking as he clapped his old friend on the back. "You're early," Miho said. "Don't tell me you're here to poach my staff already." Joonsoo gave a smooth smile, but his gaze flicked back to Alberta. "Just here to see how the best driver in Seoul handles herself in the morning." Alberta crossed her arms. "Are you implying I only shine at night?" "Not at all," he countered, his voice lower now, meant for her ears alone. "I already know you shine all the time." Miho groaned theatrically, pretending to shield his eyes. "Please, not in my garage. I didn't sign up for a romance drama." Alberta laughed, brushing past both men toward the sleek convertible she was scheduled to test. But Miho's words lingered in her chest. "Don't let him steal you away." Could he? Would she let him? Over the week that followed, the question deepened. Alberta split her time between Miho's and Joonsoo's companies, test driving cars for both. She told herself it was just work, just professionalism, but each day Joonsoo found excuses to be near her. Coffee waiting on her table before she arrived. Quiet lunches where he listened more than he spoke. His laughter mingling with hers when they traded playful jabs during events. And those small, fleeting touches. His hand steadying her elbow as she slid into a driver's seat, his palm brushing against hers when they reached for the same set of keys. Her friends noticed, of course. "Alberta, you've been glowing lately," teased Hannah, one of the showroom assistants. "What's his name?" Alberta waved her off, though the smile she tried to hide gave her away. "It's not like that." But it was. She knew it every time Joonsoo looked at her, not with the sharp, calculating eyes of a businessman, but with something softer, almost vulnerable. The contrast unraveled her. Behind the billionaire image, the arrogance, the tailored suits, there was a man who seemed to find in her something real, something grounding. On Friday evening, the luxury car showcase arrived, the grand event of the season. Alberta slipped into a sleek black dress, simple yet striking, her hair pulled back in loose waves. She had no intention of standing out, but when Joonsoo arrived to escort her, his gaze lingered long enough to tell her otherwise. "You look," he hesitated, uncharacteristically at a loss, before finishing in a whisper, "beyond anything I imagined." She tried to brush it off with a quip. "Careful, CEO Kang, people will think you're trying to charm me." He bent closer, his voice velvet at her ear. "Who says I'm not?" The showcase sparkled with chandeliers and flashing cameras, the air buzzing with prestige. Joonsoo guided Alberta inside, his hand resting lightly on her back, steady yet possessive in a way that made her chest tighten. Heads turned, whispers rippled, cameras captured their every move, but Alberta found herself tuned only to his nearness. "Is everyone staring?" she murmured, lips barely moving. "Yes," Joonsoo admitted with a faint smile, his hand brushing against hers. "But let them. Tonight, you're the most dazzling thing in this room." Her breath caught at the sincerity in his tone, and she turned to study him. The man who had once seemed so arrogant now looked at her as though nothing else mattered. Later, when the event wound down, they slipped outside into the cool night. The city lights spread before them like a sea of stars, neon mingling with moonlight. Alberta leaned against the railing, her eyes drinking in the skyline. "I used to think cars were the most thrilling thing in my life," she confessed softly. "But lately, I'm not so sure." Joonsoo stepped closer, his hand brushing hers until their fingers intertwined. "Then let me be the reason you change your mind." She turned toward him, lips parted, words failing her. And then he kissed her, not with the hesitancy of before, not with the teasing edge of their earlier moments, but with a passion that ignored the world around them. Cameras might still have been watching, Whispers might still have spread, but Joonsoo no longer cared. His arm drew her close, his lips claiming hers with certainty. For a heartbeat, Alberta stiffened, surprised by the intensity. But then she melted into him, her hands lifting to his chest, her body answering what her heart had been denying. The kiss deepened under the glow of city lights, sweet and fierce all at once, sealing something neither of them dared name yet, but both already felt. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Alberta rested her forehead against his. "You're impossible, Joonsoo." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "And yet you kissed me back." Her laugh trembled with something more than humor. "Maybe I'm impossible too." The night hummed around them, the city alive with noise and color. But in that moment, Alberta and Joonsoo stood in their own quiet world. That same night, Alberta laid awake as her mind replayed the memory of Joonsoo's kiss replaying again and again. She hadn't expected it to be so certain, so unapologetic, so different from the teasing moments they'd shared before. For once, there was no game between them, only the raw pull of something undeniable. When she finally drifted into sleep, she did so with a smile tugging at her lips. Over the next 2 months, their lives intertwined with a rhythm that felt natural, as though it had always been waiting for them. Alberta still worked at Miho's garage, but it was common now to see Joonsoo leaning against one of the cars, coffee in hand, waiting for her. Sometimes he would whisk her away the moment her shift ended, pulling her into the passenger seat of one of his gleaming machines for drives that stretched into the late hours. One crisp evening, as they raced along the Han River with the top down, the wind tangling through her hair, Alberta leaned back in the seat and laughed. "You do realize you're spoiling me, right? If I get used to this, I'll never be able to sit in a normal car again." Joonsoo's eyes flicked toward her, his smile soft despite the speed of the car. "Then I guess I'll just have to make sure you never ride in anything less. Consider it my responsibility." "Responsibility," she teased. "That sounds heavy for a man like you." "Not heavy," he said, his voice lowering with sincerity. "Worth it." The air grew quieter between them, their laughter fading into something more intimate. Alberta watched the city lights blur by, then spoke softly, almost to herself. "When I first came to Korea from Ghana, I didn't know what to expect. I was just chasing a chance, an opportunity to make something of myself. I thought cars would just be work, a way to survive. But then," she paused, biting her lip. "Then," Joonsoo prompted gently. She turned her head toward him. "Then I realized driving is freedom. Every time I get behind the wheel, it feels like I'm proving I belong here. That I can be more than what anyone thought." Joonsoo slowed the car just slightly, his expression turning thoughtful. "You know, people look at me and see success, power. But they don't see how lonely it is. Every board meeting, every gala, every deal, it's all noise. And then you appeared." "Me?" "Yes, you." His eyes stayed on the road, but his voice carried all the weight of his confession. "With you, Alberta, it's not about who I am. It's about who I can be. You make me feel human." Her chest tightened. She reached over, her fingers brushing against his on the gear shift. "Then I guess we balance each other out. I remind you you're human, and you remind me I belong." The car hummed beneath them, carrying their unspoken promises through the soul night. Not everyone missed the changes between them. One night, Miho invited Joonsoo to a high-end club, the kind where jazz curled through the air and crystal glasses clinked with quiet sophistication. Seated in a private booth, Miho swirled the amber liquid in his glass, his gaze sharp but amused. "So," he said finally, "how serious are you about Alberta?" Joonsoo didn't flinch. "Serious enough that I don't see anyone else." Miho arched a brow. "That's quite an admission from Kang Joonsoo, the untouchable billionaire. You sure this isn't just another thrill for you?" Joonsoo leaned forward, his tone steady. "She's not a thrill. She's the reason I look forward to the day. She's the one I think about when the noise fades. If that's not serious, I don't know what is." Miho studied him for a long moment, then let out a slow breath and leaned back, a smile tugging at his lips. "Good. That's what I wanted to hear." "You wanted to hear it?" Joonsoo asked, a flicker of surprise breaking through. "Yes. Because as much as I tease, I've seen her grow. She came to me nervous, wide-eyed, just looking for a job. And now look at her, confident, fierce, irreplaceable." He lifted his glass in a small toast. "I've given you my blessing, Joonsoo. Don't make me regret it." Joonsoo chuckled. "Blessing? Are you her relative now?" Miho laughed, shaking his head. "Not by blood. But she's family in a way. I've watched her climb, stumble, and rise again. Alberta is a gem. A precious one. So do cherish her." Junsoo's eyes softened, his voice low but certain. I will. More than you know. The two men clinked glasses, not as rivals that night, but as two people bound by respect for the same remarkable woman. A week later, Joonsoo told Alberta to pack light for the weekend. He refused to say more, simply grinning whenever she pressed for details. Hours later, she found herself at a coastal resort, the scent of salt thick in the air, the ocean stretching wide and endless before them. You planned all this? She asked, astonished. Of course, he replied, holding out a set of keys with a playful tilt of his lips. But the real surprise is this. Parked nearby gleamed a brand new luxury convertible, its curves catching the sunlight like liquid silver. Alberta's jaw dropped. No way. Yes way. I want you to be the first to test it. Her laughter rang out as she slid into the driver's seat, the leather hugging her like a second skin. You really know how to tempt me. I know how to make you happy, Joonsoo corrected, settling into the passenger side. The engine roared to life, and soon they were flying down the ocean road, the sea breeze whipping through their hair, their laughter rising above the rush of waves. Alberta pushed the car harder, reveling in its strength, while Joonsoo watched her with quiet admiration, his heart as open as the sky above them. When they finally pulled over at a lookout point, the sun was sinking into the horizon, painting the water in hues of gold and crimson. Alberta stepped out, the wind tugging at her hair, the ocean roaring below. Joonsoo joined her, slipping something from his pocket. A sleek car keychain glimmered in the fading light, engraved with her initials. She blinked, startled. You had this made? He pressed it into her palm, curling her fingers around it. Every car needs the right driver, he said softly. And I think my heart has found its own. Her breath hitched, eyes shimmering as she looked up at him. Joonsoo. No games, he continued, his voice almost breaking. No pretenses. Just you and me. That's all I want. Alberta cupped his face with both hands, her thumbs brushing his cheekbones. Then that's all you'll have. She kissed him deeply, no teasing, no hesitation, just the pure truth of everything they'd become. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her as if he never meant to let go. The ocean roared behind them, the sun dipped lower, and the world seemed to pause in reverence. As the camera of fate might have seen it, the scene widened. Two figures locked in an embrace, framed by waves crashing against the rocks, their hearts beating in rhythm with the sea. For Alberta and Joonsoo, the drive had led them here, not just to cars or showcases or rivalries, but to something lasting, something forever. And with the sound of the ocean as witness, they sealed it, not with engines or speed, but with love. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Driven by Desire. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and it also means you'll never miss the next chapter. Share this story with a friend who loves romance and drama, and stay tuned, because the best is yet to come.